Hey guys, Drifter here. Today we're going to be going over a very serious topic, which is the Israel-Hamas War. And I have one simple opinion about this issue, which is it's never okay to murder children, no matter what their parents did. There is no world in which violence against the most innocent among us yields a positive outcome. And I don't feel that that should be a very controversial opinion, but it probably is. And take a deep breath, calm down. You can ease up on the comments. I can hear you typing them right now. You've probably already assumed, based on this intro, that I've picked a side and projected your beliefs about what that side has to say about the other side onto me, and you're writing some crazy stuff down. But we don't do that kind of stuff here on this channel. I'm not here to talk about who is right or wrong in this particularly brutal or nasty war, and I'm not here to talk about the history of the region or the geopolitics involved. Rather, I'm here to tell you two things, two sentences, hold your breath until both are done, that what Hamas did to innocent Israeli children is an abomination, and that Israel's indiscriminate bombing campaign against civilian infrastructure, which inevitably kills children, is equally abominable. Both sides seem perfectly okay butchering little children to suit their political or religious ideological goals, and I'm not okay with that. And I've just been sitting back watching this unfold over the last couple of weeks, same as you all. And by watching, I don't mean I've been sitting around watching CNN. I've been watching the actual raw videos of atrocities posted on Our Public Freakout, Our Combat footage, a few other places. I've seen the piles of dead civilians. I've seen piles of butchered Israelis. I've seen piles of dead Palestinians. It's not good for my mental health, but this is how I have always gotten the news ever since 2001. Right after 9/11, when the war on terror broke out, I decided that the real news was probably in the videos themselves and not the sanitized version that you see on TV that primarily focuses on how many numbers of bodies have piled up. And of course, I've read news reports and follow-ups with journalists, and I try to keep up with the political responses to the problem, but the political responses were absolutely sickening to me. I guess I should be sick at the atrocities themselves, but I guess I desensitized to that. But watching world leaders say all sorts of crazy things to justify various levels of genocide has been mind-boggling. I have watched Israeli politicians do Olympic gold medal winning mental gymnastics to try to justify bombing civilian infrastructure such as hospitals and daycares just because Hamas hides underneath them. And I've watched leaders from the Arab nations that surround Israel bend over backwards to try to justify Hamas slaughtering children that are too young to speak. And then I got to watch various opinion leaders from all over social media do the exact same thing, rapidly picking one side or another to support or not for clout, trying to get some sort of edgy, really engaging post in or something like that, or try to justify their own personal biases against civilians. Of course, American politicians get on board with their various justifications, from appeasing a voter base to feeding the military-industrial complex the money that it needs. And people from all over the world that have no connection to this conflict whatsoever seem very comfortable choosing sides and very comfortable justifying brutality against children. I've watched pro-Israeli or pro-Palestinian protests pop up on almost every nation on the globe that even allows protest, ranging from peaceful and respectful to wildly violent and chants for deaths for various groups around the world. I've seen people fighting over the posters about missing children in New York City, tearing them down, fighting people that are tearing them down. Then the people putting them up started putting razors in them, so if you tear them down, you get cut. And it just baffled me because these are posters for missing kids. I've seen huge increases in anti-Semitism in social media and Islamophobia. And I've seen minority groups on either side of this conflict be targeted in various countries around the world that are not Israel or Palestine. Just little minority Jewish groups or little minority Muslim groups are taking big L's and big criticism right now. And even corporations and colleges are picking sides, which is kind of disgusting in my opinion. Colleges' enforcement on protests has been heavy-handed. Corporations are cutting people out of business and deals and employment based on their rhetoric. And of course, influencers, all trying to get clout, trying to rile their audience up to get more views and get those really low-value advertising dollars that you get on content like this, or appease a sponsor or something like this. and then almost immediately get canceled by at least some group or organization. And selfishly, I thought that I could sit this one out and not have an opinion. I saw this disaster unfold, at least on the creator side of things, and thought, man, maybe I just shouldn't say anything. Maybe I should just let this atrocity go and focus on Call of Duty. And just keep my sponsors, keep my money and my paychecks. And by the way, my opinions here on this channel do not reflect that of my sponsors or that of any of the game companies whose games I play and post. This is just me, a guy in a chair, expressing an opinion. And for the life of me, I can't just sit around and do nothing while watching half of the internet advocate for war crimes, mostly against the civilian population. I feel like I have to speak out and say that no matter how much you hate the other group, how emotionally charged, how religiously, culturally intrinsic you are tied into one group or another, that there is no crime grievous enough to justify violence against the criminal's kids. And this should not be a controversial opinion, but it probably is. And I may lose some business and I may get demonetized and I'll probably definitely lose some subscribers over this. I just can't believe how much time we spend sitting around justifying attacks against the civilian population just because they don't like the other group. And as a brief little bit of apologetics here, I acknowledge that the people of Palestine have been oppressed and uprooted from their homes and suffered countless acts of brutality for 80 plus years now, and that the state of Israel is doing, and will probably continue to do horrible things to the people of Palestine. And yet all of this misery that they have suffered over the decades cannot possibly justify Hamas kidnapping, raping, brutally torturing, and murdering countless innocent Israeli children, the elderly, the infirm, and just random civilians that had absolutely nothing to do with this. While at the same time, I can acknowledge that the people of Israel have faced a variety of existential threats over the last probably couple thousand years. One of them, the biggest one most recently, has been the Hamas terrorists living inside of Palestine right next to them, committing various acts of terrorism against the state of Israel and its population, from rockets to suicide bombings I've seen on the news since I was a child. And I also acknowledge that the attacks from Hamas recently, where they, butchered and raped the children and whatnot, were beyond barbaric. And yet all of those terror attacks, that recent incursion, all of the terrible things that were done, again, cannot possibly justify Israel knowingly bombing refugee camps filled with desperate women and children in the hopes that they kill some of the Hamas members that are also in the camps and using these people as human shields. Deploying violence in order to defeat evil only spreads it even further, kind of like cutting off a hydra's head or continuing the cycle of violence by further radicalizing the survivors of both parties. This is true anywhere in the world and not just the Middle East. And all those parents of dead kids and all those kids with dead parents will likely go through life harboring the exact same kind of hate in their hearts that perpetuates this cycle of violence. And the only way out of this is for somebody somewhere to decide to take the high road. And the high road is a very hard road to take because it's costly to a nation. It's costly politically. It costs lives. It costs money. It's difficult to win a war without doing terrible things to people. The high road is very hard to take because anyone who takes it risks their political career, financial support, support of the people, or if a nation got involved, they would most likely be sacrificing their people and their soldiers' lives in order to try to do things the right way. And that's very hard to justify after having already recently lost a lot of people. And I think that I'm cynical enough now as an adult that war isn't as upsetting to me as it probably should be. At least in some capacity, it seems inevitable. It seems a part of human nature. And it's also true that there's no such thing as a humane war. That's just an oxymoron. There's no war where civilians don't get hurt. In every war, civilians always suffered the most. But the part that cuts through my cynicism about the nature of human conflicts is the people that just don't care about civilians suffering, or in some cases seem to enjoy it, seem to revel in it, chants death to this group, death to that group, laughs and jokes about people suffering and dying. It hurts me to see the Israeli army not even trying to limit casualties. They're a superpower player in this region. They have a huge army. They have international backing and are probably one of the very few nuclear powers in the Middle East. So they have the ability to do better or to care or to try, but they probably won't because the most recent attacks from Hamas have hardened even the softest of bleeding hearts and sympathies there. Opinion has swapped very, very, very hard in favor of just kill them all. Similarly, it pains me to see Hamas using Palestinian civilians as human shields to protect themselves and their assets. They set up bases of operations in hospitals, inside civilian infrastructure. Pretty much anything that would be a war crime to attack is where they set up because they need the human shields for protection. I read an article this week about them tying people together and marching them forward as actual meat shields. It sickens me to see reports of Hamas stealing fuel or hoarding resources that all of the refugees in Palestine desperately need to survive. All the fuel it runs the generators for the hospitals, food, transportation, medicine. Hamas is stealing all of it and leaving their own people high and dry while promising more brutality against the Israelis. So, at the end of this video, the one singular only point that I want anybody to care about, that I want to say one more time very clearly, is that anybody anywhere on the planet that believes violence against children is acceptable because of the crimes their parents committed is objectively wrong. No terror attack, no bombing, no war, no philosophy, no religion, and no amount of suffering justifies punishing the most innocent among us, destroying, perverting, obliterating, whatever adjective you want to the future generation. It just propagates that forward. And I think anybody advocating for that position, any politician that you see, anybody arguing on TV, any talking head on social media is completely morally bankrupt. And also not a person that I would like to listen to about anything ever again. And if you, the viewer, feel so emotionally attached to this war because of your religion or your ethnic background or your personal beliefs or experiences in this matter, that you think it's okay to butcher the children of the other side, then you are also morally bankrupt and objectively wrong, and that's definitely going to catch up to you one day. I really don't have a clever way to end this video. I don't have a really like a topic that wraps up nice with a catchphrase and I smile and I'm done. I just feel like this needed to be said. I don't see enough people saying this. I feel like somebody had to say something, do something. And what I'm trying to say is not quite the same as I want peace or ceasefire that or truce this kind of thing, but a more broad, scary social phenomenon that when we get mad enough, it's just okay to do horrible things to children. I hate that, and I think that is one of the most morally bankrupt things on the planet. So, guys, that's all for this video. I hope that you learned something useful, and I do hope that some of you agree with me. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.